I'm here on the War at Home, If Only Someone Knew, and Guardians War Cry on Facebook pages, and also Guardians War Cry on YouTube. I'm an admin on there. I'm also a um, survivor expert of coercive uh, control abuse. And so I talk about it quite openly to try to get some understanding for people that are suffering with it, and also for society in general to understand what it is, what it looks like. Because if coercive control is the underpinning for all abuse, then we should be looking at that and we should see it for what it is, know what it is, so that we can protect ourselves in the communities that we live in. And if we look at um, manipulation, I kind of looked it up in the dictionary and it was coming across in a different way this time. Then I've had conversations with other people about manipulation. So I'm going to go with my other people and their thoughts about manipulation, because I think that it drives this point of manipulation and influence can be this thing that tries to move things in a direction for good. And manipulation and influence can be things that turn things into bad in order to, um, what do you call it? Influence the direction of something in a selfish manner rather than either one that offers growth to people or one that takes away life. A lot of times I talk about things like, is this life giving or is this taking away from life? And I would say manipulation sits on that fence along with influence as to whether or not it's actually um, allowing people to be themselves and to grow uh, in the way that we talk and present ourselves or influence people. And the other side of that is this coercive control, this coercion that's trying to get you to be what somebody wants you to be to them, what society wants you to be as far as a society is concerned, or an organization such as religion or school settings, learning academic kind of things. Um, may set up to where they want everybody to be a certain way, and you have to see how that, you can't have disruption in the middle of trying to teach something to somebody, because that's not going to be um, cohesive in driving whatever discussion you're having. Kind of like now, I feel like I'm all over this place, and I'm sorry. But what's kind of sparked this for me is uh, I talk a lot about this Biderman, Albert Biderman. He was a social scientist in the 1957s who did a research on the men who came home from Korea, POWs, and why they were so affected by what had been done to them. And he interviewed about, I think, 7,905 men, and 5% of those men uh, did not cooperate with their abusers. But 95, that leaves 95% of men that did cooperate with their abusers. And Biderman also attached this to domestic violence and abuse in the way that coercive control has been used uh, on society. Mainly men study this in strategic ways, to use coercive control. They also study um, war and that kind of thing, so they have a better idea of it. And I think that women need to come up into that conversation, because that's where that coercion is in the story, that women or people who are agreeable um, get caught up in this coercion from somebody that may not be a good person and a good fit for you. So I want to tell a little story about uh, my dad and I. My dad was upset with me, and this was probably about 20 years ago. He was upset with me. Maybe it was about 10 years ago. Anyway, he was upset with me, and he didn't like that I was not taking his side as he viewed it to what was going on. And so he did this thing from Biderman's work. And Biderman's work uh, has 8 topics. There's isolation, monopolization of perception, humiliation and degradation, exhaustion, threats, occasional indulgences, demonstrating omnipotence, and forcing trivial demands. And the reason I'm telling you this story is I want you to start to look at things that are happening to you and see if you can identify whether this is going on in this relationship, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, and understanding that you have this autonomy, we have liberty here in the United States to be free people. And so if somebody's pressing up against that, they're pressing up against your liberties. So back to the dad story. So my dad wanted me to give him the phone number of a son that he wasn't talking to very much. The side note is that son is the one who was siding with me. We were siding together on this issue. And my dad didn't like that. So he kept asking me for my brother's phone number. My other brother lived across the street from my dad, and he had that phone number. And I really just did not want to get into the drama of this whole thing. And so I kept saying, you can get it from my other brother. And he kept asking. And I figured out what it was that he was doing. It's that forcing of a trivial demand, of me giving him that phone number, of me giving up and saying, okay, here you go, here's the number. And then he had a way in trying to work those other manipulations, in trying to talk to me and monopolize my perception of how to see things his way, and isolating me from the conversation, not being a conversation with everybody, but isolating and applying pressure so that I would curtail to what it was that he wanted me to think. And when I didn't do it this one day, and my mother had passed away, he said to me, he said, I bet you miss your mom. And it immediately made me cry. And I was like, what is that? And I didn't understand what he was doing. And I said, of course I miss my mom. And then I realized that he was angry because I wasn't going to give him the number. And so he went to hurt me. And I hung up the phone with him. I told him I had to go, and I hung up the phone with him. And a few days later, when I got calmer, I called him up and I said, don't you ever do that to me again. I understood what you're doing, and I don't want to have this conversation with you. We simply disagree on the way that this should be handled. End of story. Can't have conversations with people who want to use these kind of tactics that Biderman is talking about to try to make you be who they want you to be without your permission. And your permission is understanding what these tactics are. If you're with an abusive people and they're trying to influence you into only listening to their way of thinking, then are they really thinking about you in a well-rounded way for you to be the person that you are? Not the person they want you to be, but the person that you are or that you choose to be. You see, that's just one of those. And even in that little bit of what I'm saying to you, he wanted to let me know that he could hurt me. That's that slight of that omnipotence. Like he was God and he could come in and he could stab me. It's just not a way that you treat people that you love. It kills the connection. And people have to get to know themselves better. And people don't understand why people stay in these relationships. When you look at Biderman's work, you're like 95% of the men in that situation gave in. And this is happening in homes, in workplaces, in churches, in society, in political theater. This idea of you've got to think my way. And I'm asking you to start looking at people and the way that people are working with you. Even if you look at the news and see something on the news and you're like, how does that fit into that Biderman? Start thinking about how you're being manipulated as a person. Got a couple of chats here I can't get to for some reason. Hold on. Anyway, I want you to think about, I did a thing last week about straight lines of communication. This is why straight lines of communication are important, because I know what I said to this person. At least I hope I know what I said to that person. Excuse me. But I know I said to that person. And now if that person is coming back to me and saying, I said something different, or this person over here said that to this other person that I said something different, then I know I need to just do a straight line and try to figure out what that is. Could be just miscommunication, because communication's hard. It could be the way that I'm filtering it in and taking it in. It could be that there is some coercion going on in the way that somebody is treating me. And I need to look at that and have a good understanding of what that looks like. Now, sorry guys, I went to my, excuse me. Whoops, wrong one. Hold on a minute. In my conversation with straight lines of communication, I say no triangles. When we take the time to understand the self, to define who we are, to speak up for our needs and show compassion towards ourselves, we ultimately learn to love ourselves. As a result, we will be able to distance ourselves from people who create, who create triangles and turmoil. Sorry, I took a lousy picture of that. Hold on. And of course, it's not loading. Anyway, straight lines and no triangles. There's a post about it. I feel a little off today. I'm not having the greatest of days, but that's okay. You see, the capacity for individuals or groups to make informed decisions and act independently, free from external influence and coercion. That's autonomy. That means if I tell somebody I'm going to the store and I'm out doing something and I realize I need to go to a different store, I can go to that different store because I have autonomy. That doesn't mean I'm lying to somebody or cheating them because I'm not telling them exactly where I'm at. That doesn't mean I'm hiding something from them. That just means I changed my mind. And I think that we have the right, to do those things. Autonomy leads us to empowerment. We work hard to maintain balance between collaboration and cooperation and independence. That's by Bobby Kotick. And I think it's important to understand what coercive control looks like. What is the coercion that's going on? Who is trying to isolate you from a situation? Who is trying to monopolize your perception of a situation that maybe you think differently on? And they don't like you not to agree with them. And they isolate you from the people that are important to you. They humiliate and degrade you. So that's kind of how I felt with my dad, that degradation. Like I'm not good enough. Miss your mom, don't you? Exhaustion. They'll do things like sleep deprivation. Be sleeping, working a night shift, and they come home in the middle of the day pounding things around because they're mad about something, but they don't want to tell you what they're mad about. They exhaust you by continually pushing on you to do tasks for them, those trivial demands to keep you under what they want. They want to make sure that you're calling them when you get there. They use it as safety, but you got to wonder, is it really safety? Because wouldn't your friend call somebody and say, "Hey, so and so didn't show up and they were going to come and I'm not able to get a hold of them." These occasional indulgences, these flirtations with fantasies in order to pull you in and lure you in. That's that influence. That's that luring. That's that manipulation. If they're luring you in to have a good time or to have fun and just let loose, that's one thing. But if they're luring you in to live some kind of fantasy for them, and it's done all the time, you got to wonder what that is. Demonstrating that they know all the answers. Their way or the highway. They're the important one. They're who makes the decisions. And then those forcing trivial demands. I hope this helps you in understanding a little bit more of what coercion is, what coercive control looks like in this idea of Biderman. There's a lot more to this whole system, but try to start to get used to looking at things. Am I being isolated from this person? Is this person isolating me from others in the group that maybe I align with more? Are they monopolizing my perception? All of those 8 tactics, look at them, try to get them in your back pocket. so you can start to see it in real time. I was watching the news today and I was like, well, this is interesting because these people are saying this, and then these people are saying this, and it's the same thing in the way that they're talking, but one is using it as satire and the other one uses it to distract the others from what's really going on. You got to see it for what it is. Got to use our brains, that critical thinking, not the way somebody else thinks, but the way we think. We are important by ourselves, and collectively as a group, we should be cheering each other on, caring about each other, loving each other as far as I'm concerned. And I just want you to know that if you're here and you're struggling with these kinds of things, please know that you're loved and cared for. And I hope you have a good night. Take care. I'm going to go do some self-care for myself. I've had a day today. Take care. Bye-bye.